Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Surina and I am a general surgery registrar, and I got my top choice ST3 job location this year, so I thought I would make this video to share my top interview tips. There is so much to cover, and this interview should really be treated like an exam in terms of how much you prepare for it and the types of details that you obsess over to get the highest marks. My aim with this video is to provide a solid introduction into what the interviews entail, and also to provide standalone frameworks for each station to provide you good structures to answer each station effectively. If you want to dive in with even more detail and talk a lot more about what kinds of scenarios come up, what kind of answers you can give, watch worked examples between my colleagues and I, as well as a chance for one-to-one practice and one-to-one feedback, then please sign up to our interview workshop, which will be launching very soon in the description box below. This is a paid workshop to reflect all the time and commitment that goes into making such a high quality course. But if that's not your thing, then please feel free to carry on watching this video for free and checking out the other videos on this topic on my channel. And there is also a free PDF up for grabs if you sign up again in the description box below. That will include lots of useful structures for you to help you in your interview practice. So let's start with outlining the interviews. The interviews are held online and they are made up of 3 stations. The clinical station, which is 5 minutes of reading time and 10 minutes of answering the question. The management station, which is again 5 minutes of reading time and 10 minutes of answering the question. And the portfolio station. So let's start with outlining the interviews. The interviews are held online and they are made up of 3 stations. The clinical station, which is 5 minutes of reading time and 10 minutes of answering the question. The management station, which is again 5 minutes of reading time and 10 minutes of answering the question. And the portfolio station, which is a straight 10 minutes of answering the questions. This is 40 minutes in total. In your reading preparation time, you are allowed pen and paper, and it's very important you make good notes in this time. And the order of the stations can be in any order, and there may also be waiting time in between the stations, and both of these things really threw me because I ended up being online for much longer than the 40 minutes because of all the waiting in between. Next, talking about preparation and resources. I'm not going to spend too much time on this section because I did address it in my last ST3 video, which I'll link on the screen now. But very quickly, the main things you need to know are to look at the application handbook, which has got loads of useful information in there about the whole application process, including the interview. The person specification page, which will have a lot of useful information for what the interviewers are looking for. Courses are never mandatory, you don't need to do any courses at all, but with interviews in particular, it's very useful to have platforms where you can practice giving answers and, more importantly, get feedback from your peers and from your seniors. The courses I did are mentioned in my last video, and if you're interested in the interview workshop I'll be running, again, the sign up form is in the description box below. Question banks wise, there are a few out there. I've only got experience using MediBuddy, which, as I talked about in my last video, had a very good contents page of the types of stations that have come up, but in terms of the notes and feedback it gave, I didn't find that was very specific or particularly in depth. In terms of books, I only used one, which is this one, Cracking the General Surgical Interviews for ST3. I just got it off Amazon and I found this really useful to, again, give me more station ideas, but also the feedback and the example answers were really quite in depth and made me think about things I hadn't thought about before. So I really recommend this one if you're able to get your hands on it. Okay, let's jump into the clinical station. The clinical station mark scheme is as follows. There are 10 points for recognition of clinical issues, 10 points for judgment and prioritization, 10 points for the use of resources, and 10 points for your communication strategy. So it's out of 40 points in total. If I had to summarize all of these scoring domains in one overarching theme, it would be situational awareness. Of course, you need to know the steps of how to clinically manage surgical emergencies and unwell patients. And I'll put some example scenarios of things that can come up on the screen now. But what really makes you stand out and do well in these interviews is putting yourself in the minds and the shoes of an ST3 registrar. This means deciding and recognizing what the issues are, prioritizing them depending on how time critical they are, and then coming up with solutions using the resources you have available to you. So it's not just about solving the problems, it's saying who you will use, what things you will do simultaneously, what you will do now and what you will do later, what you would ask someone else to do. This all requires you to have a lot more situational thinking, and then of course it's about communicating your steps logically. Key to doing well in all of these stations is to have a really sound structure in place. A structure allows you to come across as a good communicator. It allows you to organize your thoughts and therefore show the interviewer you've organized your thoughts. The following structures are what I used, but obviously you can figure out what works well for you and what kind of fits in with your own flow. My structures are all suggestions. The first thing I did for my clinical station answers is to explicitly state my differentials and top concerns. This should be a 1 to 2 sentence summary of what you think is going on and what the key problems are. This not only helps you organize your thoughts and direct your future management steps towards these differentials and concerns, but it also shows the examiner that you are able to prioritize and that you have identified the most pressing issues early on. Specific differentials would be all the different pathologies you think are going on for an unwell patient. And specific concerns could range from all sorts of things, but patient safety should be at the top of your priority. So things like a patient being very comorbid and not fit for an operation, them being on anticoagulation and at a high bleeding risk. Verbalizing these concerns early make for a very strong start to your answer. The next part of my answer was always the pre-assessment part. This was the things that you could do before you even arrive at the situation. So mobilizing people in your team, calling ahead to ask people to start things or stop things or delay things, gathering more information on your way. All of these things show that you are, again, aware of your surroundings and your team, but also they can be some temporizing measures where often you'll have multiple priorities and multiple patient safety issues to deal with, and there are things that you can sort out in real life on the phone or through other people. So show that in the interview it's not just you and you're using these other avenues as well. The next section is the assessment section. So this is your A to E, standard kind of resuscitation and management of an unwell patient. Now, I wouldn't go into a lot of detail here of talking about, every single thing that you're going to look and listen and feel for in your A to E. But because you've stated your differentials early on, I would use your A to E section to then talk about specific things you're going to do for those specific differentials you have. So if someone's got abdominal pain and one of your differentials is pancreatitis, when you're taking bloods in this section, you want to specifically mention your amylase or lipase. If early on you've noticed and mentioned that someone is on anticoagulation, then in this section you want to be checking a clotting when you do your bloods. It's things like that your differentials really help you hone in on once you've started your actual management process. The next section I talk about is my post-assessment section, and that I divide further into my short-term management and my long-term management. Short-term management is all about the things you would do if the patient is stable or if the patient is unstable. If they are stable, then you can talk about things like imaging and talking to other teams and escalating to your consultant in terms of decision making for definitive management, be that in theatre or with interventional radiology or endoscopic management or management on the ward. Those are the kind of discussions you can have. If they are unstable, then you need to be vocalizing this and then talking about what management routes this would take you down. After this, I think it's very high impact to talk about your long-term management. So what next? What's going to be happening on the wards? What other teams are going to be involved with this patient in the future? What follow-up will this patient require? Who else needs updating, thinking about relatives and family members? I think this is where the situational awareness can really shine through, and there is so much you can talk about in this section as well. So I think it's really worth milking it to really help you stand out from other candidates. Next up is the management station, also out of 40 points. Here there are 10 points for recognition of issues and situational awareness, 10 points for prioritization, 10 points for teamwork and finding solutions, and 10 points for your communication. The type of management scenarios vary a lot. I'll put some of the types of things that can come up on the screen now. And in a way, I found this a lot harder to prepare for and to deliver than the clinical stations, because they are a lot more evidence and guideline driven. Whereas with the management scenarios, there'll be, again, a lot going on probably, and there won't necessarily be any right or wrong answers. You are kind of free to talk about how you would manage this as long as you are justifying your decision making. The structure I chose to use for my management answers was the SPIES framework. So S stands for situation, where you basically summarize the situation ahead of you. Like I said, sometimes the information you're given in this station is quite convoluted, so it's a very good skill to be able to summarize it in 1 to 2 sentences, not only to, again, signpost to the interviewers, you know what's going on, but it also, I found it very useful to kind of buy me a bit of thinking time and a bit of time to calm myself down before just launching into my answer. P is for problems. Following my summary, I found it useful to, again, just state exactly what problems there were, because it helped to direct the rest of my answer as I went about solving each of the problems I had already identified. There can be all sorts of different problems that arise, be it from training issues, resource issues, interpersonal issues, but what must always be stated as your number one problem in terms of your number one priority is patient safety. There will always be some sort of patient safety issue, so just get into the habit of making sure you state that as your top priority and top problem every time. I and E stand for initiative and escalation, and this is where you can really show off your problem solving skills and ability to think outside of the box. Usually finding solutions means talking to other people, be that the patient themselves to clarify situations or offer apologies, other members of the healthcare team to, again, find out more information that you might need or help you figure something out, and of course escalating to seniors where appropriate as well. The next S stands for support. This can be in the form of providing the patient support, but also providing yourself support, so thinking about your educational and training needs as well. Patient safety will always, of course, be a priority, but it shows really good holistic thinking if you're thinking about yourself as a trainee and your training needs too. Finally, it's the portfolio station. So here there are also 40 points, 10 for your management and leadership involvement, 10 for your teaching experience, 10 for general portfolio development, and 10 of course for your communication again. This station comprises of questions that probably wouldn't surprise you that much, things like tell me about leadership and tell me about your teaching experience, or what have you been adding to your portfolio since you submitted it a few months ago. Although the questions are straightforward, again, this is quite a challenging station because figuring out how to answer it can be challenging. Generally, we're not very good at talking about ourselves and our achievements, and it's very easy for this to become quite rambling and sort of a whole life story type conversation, but it still really needs a good structure to fall back on. There are lots of different ones you can use. There is the CAMP structure, which is dividing your achievements into clinical, academic, medical, and personal. This is actually a really good structure to go through your portfolio with and kind of slot everything you've done into these 4 categories. You will be asked about 1 or 2 or all of them at some point, so it's good to have those all stored in the front of your brain, ready to talk about when you're asked about them. Other structures you can use is if they ask you about leadership or teaching, then you can divide them into international, national, and local, or you could divide them into clinical and non-clinical. It's always good to have some sort of subheadings when you're talking, because those subheading words are what the interviewer latches onto and can kind of know what page you're on and what you're talking about quite quickly. Remember, they're hearing answers multiple times a day for multiple days on end, and if you are just rambling, it'll be very hard for them to A, stay engaged, and B, importantly, know what to give you marks for. So the more subheadings and buzzwords you can use, the easier it is for them to latch on. And because of the repetitive natures of the interviews, it's very, very important to front load all of your answers. So put all your most impressive stuff at the beginning. Put your international and national things at the beginning, not as a sort of final conclusion sentence. Put your oral presentations ahead of your posters. You know, multi-cycle audit that got published and presented ahead of a one-cycle thing that you just spent a couple of weeks doing. Put all your impressive things at the beginning, because that's what the interviewers will hear, and their interest will probably tail off by the end, and you don't want them to miss something big. And now, just to end with my top 5 tips. Number 1, use your prep time wisely. You get that 5 minutes of prep time for your clinical and management stations. You're allowed pen and paper, so really make good use of that time. This is where your structures come in really handy, because if you've already got a structure to fall back on, you can just kind of fill in all the boxes in your preparation time and not have to worry about what you're going to say first and then what you're going to say next. You've already got that structure ready to go. Number 2, always think about situational awareness. Think about the people, the resources, the logistics. Talking about these things is what makes you stand out. Number 3, know your national guidelines and scoring systems. This really helps you stratify risk and justify your decision making in the clinical station. So make sure you're familiar and up to date with all the latest guidelines. Number 4, know your portfolio inside out. You will be quizzed heavily on it in your portfolio station, but you'll also be quizzed on things that you might not have submitted. So make sure you have an up-to-date understanding of your portfolio and have easy access to, you know, the numbers of cases in your logbook or the numbers of presentations, the numbers of publications, because that's what makes for the short, snappy headlines in your answers. And number 5, communication is key. As you will have noticed, it makes up a quarter of your marks for every single station. So there are lots of points up here for grabs, and it's something you can really train yourself to do well. It's all about the S's. It's all about your structures, your signposting, your specificity when you're stating your problems, and stating, for that matter, being really explicit with what you're about to talk about. These are all things you can practice and get better at. With communication, of course, comes all the non-verbal cues as well. So how you're dressed, how you're sitting, how you're maintaining eye contact. Make sure you're practicing online as well as in person whenever you can. I appreciate there's been a lot of information in this video, and when it comes to interviews, it's one thing to understand what you need to do, but an entirely different thing to understand how to synthesize it all, and most importantly, how to communicate it effectively in the interview under high pressure conditions. This is why we've created a more in-depth workshop that gives us the time and space to discuss these things in more detail, but most importantly, give you a chance to practice in a safe environment with plenty of feedback to help you get better. The link to sign up to that workshop is in the description box below. Hope to see you there, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.